now would probably be a good time, if you haven't already, to take a look at your first quarter. How are you doing on pace to your goals, right? And whether you're doing well or you're not, there's a shift happening in the marketplace right now that really should cause you to take a deeper look at it. And so one of the things I always say is, if I'm going to take a look backwards, I need to take a look at what worked for me, and probably need to double down on that stuff.
Right.
But I also need to take a look at what hasn't worked for me, and I need to eliminate that. If it's not giving me the ROI, wad that up in the trash, throw it, right? Boom. That was a 3, by the way. Welcome to another episode of the Context to Contracts podcast. I am Bryan Lovell with Mr. John Jones, my amazing co-host. And, John, I just figured we'd have a little bit of a conversation today about some things that are going on in the market. And what got me thinking about it is I took a call this morning from somebody who was asking me, hey, how am I doing? In other words, they were looking to compare their business, and in fairness, this was a real estate agent. They were looking to compare their business to the same time period the previous year. And to me, the question was kind of out of context. And the reason the question was kind of out of context is because, we can look at our business compared year over year. I think it's a valuable measurement. We had Jared on here a couple of weeks ago, Jared Weatherford, and he talked about knowing your business, and you're a professional if you do. But to me, the measurement that I would want to measure myself up against is, how am I doing against the rest of the market, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm just going to throw out some numbers out of thin air to kind of give the analogy of what I'm talking about. And so let's say that, and this doesn't matter what kind of sales you're in. Like, I used to be in retail sales, and we compared year over year retail sales to the numbers that came in, federally, right?
Right.
So what we would take a look at is, hey, if I'm up 10% year over year, but the market is up 20%, what could that say about my business?
Your business is probably down a bit.
It could be down a bit, right?
Right. You're up, but compared to, relatively speaking, the business could be, if something that you're selling is hot, in demand, you should be industry, up 20%, to be just average with the industry increase.
And maybe I'm
Otherwise,
a little bit,
you're falling behind.
Yeah. So maybe I'm a little bit harsh, but to your point, am I at pace to everybody else around me? Meaning, if the market's up 20%, that's the average, right? Now, I don't know about, I've known you a while. I know you're not an average guy. I don't want to be an average guy. So when I'm looking at that as the benchmark, if I'm up 10% year over year and the market's up 20, I'm underperforming.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, and one of the things that I think that we like to measure, whether it's real estate, mortgage, or anything that you're selling, is price is irrelevant. So, volume's irrelevant, right? So let's just say mortgages and real estate, for example. If you're going to measure yourself in success, measure it in units. Units sold, whether it's buy side sold month to month, year over year, list side sold month to month, year over year. The same thing in the mortgage industry, because, while we're having a great year in both of those industries, we've seen 18 to 20% price appreciation in the last 12 months. Yeah.
And you didn't do anything to earn that.
Right.
Yeah.
You just got yourself a 20% raise, we'll call it, across the board.
Yes. For doing nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, that's inflation that's driving that number. So don't compare, hey, my volume is up 20%. I must be killing it if you've closed the same amount of business.
Yes.
Unit-wise.
Yeah. I used to work with somebody who said that units were a reflection of your activities within the market, whereas the price was a reflection of the market.
Correct.
So you didn't do anything to earn necessarily the market that we're in, but the activities that you're doing in the market certainly did. So, excuse me. So I go back to like the conversation we were just having. If I'm up 10% and the market is up 20, there's some questions I have to start asking myself. And one of the main one is my business, if I'm not up to the benchmark, where the market is at, am I riding the market, or are my business activities a reflection of where my business is at? Because what happens if you're riding the market, if the market shifts and goes the other way, what happens?
Your business drops off. Yeah,
your business drops
decrease.
Off too, right? So I don't think anybody wants their business to ebb and flow with the market. And I think the reality is we have to understand that there are things that we can do within the market that are going to grow our business regardless of the market that we're in.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So speaking of the market,
smoking hot right now, right?
It's ridiculous hot.
I go back to, if you're selling a home right now in the United States, it's never been this.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's never been this amazing, and just talking to people, over the last couple of weeks, just in my travels, people are starting to really consider selling that are not really sellers, and trying to figure out a strategy for maybe an exit and then a re-entry.
Yeah.
The kids have gone off to school, so I'm not talking families, but I'm talking not you and I. We need to stay where we're at with our kids. But for folks that are in that situation, it's unique because you've got a lot of things to consider. So I look at what's gone on with the political change that we're going through. We're at a 15% capital gain rate currently. A lot of people that have bought homes years ago have maybe seen the max that they can, the 250 exemption or the 500. They've blown by that in some cases. So if you're a seller and you're in that situation, you've got 15% above and beyond that. That's due to the IRS. If you were to sell that home, how much longer do you hang on to it? Do you sell and then jump into a new home?
Yeah.
To restart that, that exemption.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's crazy how quickly everything changes and shifts, because I'm going to take us back to the beginning of 2020. We put our heads down, we put business plans together based on our business being the way it had been really for the last 3 years. Maybe even longer, right? It was predictable. We knew it was going to happen. It's like the same behaviors and activities that we do in the market are continuing to work. And so it's kind of like you put together a business plan and it was like set it and forget it territory, right? Because the market had been so steady and so the same for a number of years. And I learned a valuable lesson during this time period too. We'll get to that. But then March rolls around. Now all bets are off. At first you're like, oh my goodness, the world is shutting down because of COVID.
Right.
And by the way, that for us in our business, that was a short period of time. Not a short period of time that we were shut down, but it was a short period of time of uncertainty. I don't know what happens next. Uncertainty. Thank you. And then we moved into, hey, we have a great opportunity here if we execute, right? And so the business took off. Refinance market got huge overnight, fast. It was like liquid
smoking
fire,
hot,
smoking hot. Yep. And that's one of those things where you could take a look at and look back and say, hey, how did I do? Because it was coming so fast and furious. Average producers were having President's Club years. And by the way, I'm not taking anything away from you if you did that. Right? Because what you did well was you went out and executed the opportunity. That's what matters.
Yeah, 100%. I think now that we're seeing that shift back a year later, we've kind of run that course with the low rates. We've seen rates come up the first quarter of 2021. You and I probably want to talk about what's your plan to stay on track with some of the numbers that you were able to throw out for 2020. Yes. A lot of us, right, we loved our 2020, right? Yes. We loved looking at those paychecks, and we don't want that to go away. No. So I think it's super important that, we typically start January with the business plan, but that was still rolling, and really whatever the plan was, you probably were just doing full speed ahead, still with the refi opportunity.
Yeah, running with your hair on fire.
But that's that now that's over. Now more than ever, I think it's time that you just really got to analyze, here going forward, the last 8 months of 2021, to get back on track, because I think, to your point earlier, it's going to go back to the market we were more used to. And, you know, the traditional
2017, 2018,
right,
2019
where it's 80
market,
to 90% of your transactions are purchase related. They're not, you know, now we've got some folks that have flipped where, you know, this past year they did probably 60, 70%, maybe a little bit more refi in certain markets. And by the way, not to shun, they still did a great job with purchases that were out there. They just had a ton of opportunity to save hundreds of homeowners a lot of money, so they capitalized on it, and good for them, as you alluded to. But now it's time to refocus and shift back to that traditional, I've got to get down to my core activities that's going to drive my business going forward.
Kind of making that shift back to the core, like you said.
It's been a year, and we've got back at it.
And I think you're right. You know, we went into 2021 with a similar business plan to the way that we ended 2020. It was the right one to do at the time, but the market and business is starting to shift a little bit. And so, you know, I think the mistake, I said I made a mistake. You know, my mistake for a number of years was, I'm going to write this business plan and I'm going to stick to it like the letter of the law from January to December, right? The lesson is you've got to go back and you got to look at it periodically, right?
100%.
And that might be, I'm taking a weekly look at it. You know, again, I go back to what Jared Rutherford shared with us. Like, there are certain disciplines in his real estate business that they track weekly, right? And I'm a huge subscriber to that. You know, we track stuff weekly, right? At our level. So, you're going back and you're taking a look at what worked for you. So whether that's, I'm taking a look at my business plan on a monthly basis, maybe a quarterly basis. We're in the middle of April right now. Now would probably be a good time, if you haven't already, to take a look at your first quarter. How are you doing on pace to your goals, right? And whether you're doing well or you're not, there's a shift happening in the marketplace right now that really should cause you to take a deeper look at it. And so one of the things I always say is, if I'm going to take a look backwards, I need to take a look at what worked for me and probably need to double down on that stuff.
Right.
But I also need to take a look at what hasn't worked for me, and I need to eliminate that. If it's not giving me the ROI, wad that up in the trash, throw it, right? Boom. That was a 3, by the way. That was an air 3. It's like playing the air guitar.
Well, you're good.
Except it was
you
air
look like a basketball guy.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. There's no fat basketball guys.
Yeah. So when you talk about what's not working in your business plan, what's a good time frame? I mean, traditionally we don't want to go week to week on that, right? We want to give it, give that activity an opportunity to run its course. But probably looking at 60, 90 days if you're consistently hitting on something. Yeah. And then just evaluate every few weeks, and but you've got to commit to it. Go with it for a good 2 or 3 months, much like a diet. We kind of get on that diet and we go, the first week or two.
That's a 4-letter word, bro.
Yeah. The first week or two, we're like, I'm not really dropping, but you've got to be consistent with that or whatever activity it is, and then sit back, like you said, after a quarter and analyze it and say, these 3 things worked. This one, not so much, and it's...
Yeah, I think, John...
That was all net.
That was all net. Yeah, you bring up...
I had to shoot.
Yeah. Hey, winners want the ball.
There you go. Seth Curry, man, just shoot a lot and you're going to score.
Yeah.
Shotgun approach.
Yeah. So you bring up a really great point. And the question that you kind of posed is, how long should I stick with something before determining this isn't giving me the ROI? And I think that a lot of times when we try stuff that's new, we bail on it before we got an opportunity. Yeah, right? We bail on it before we really took an opportunity to see if it was going to play out or not. So I don't have a right or wrong answer for you, but I think that is something that you have to take a look at as a sales professional, is if this isn't working, did I give it my best effort and enough time for it to? And if you didn't, I would say stick with it. But if you did, I think you got, it's like the old adage, like, slow to hire, quick to fire. Like your business activities are kind of like that too, right? Slow to see if it's going to pay out the ROI, but when you realize it's not, you got to be quick to cut it from your business. Yeah.
Yep.
So, you look back on, where your business has been for, like we were talking about the last quarter, how are you doing versus your goals? But I think right now too, this is what we're talking about, is the shift in the market. A lot of us in the mortgage space, a lot of our behaviors and activities were built on taking advantage of the refi market, which was the right thing to do at that time. And the market is starting to shift a little bit in that regard, and going back more towards the purchase market being the higher percentage of your product mix, right?
We need inventory.
Right. And so if that's what you're seeing in your local market where you're at as a loan originator, you need to be taking a look at that business plan and determining, hey, do I still have a business plan built for the market today? Or is my business plan built for the market of yesterday? And that's where, I learned over the last 12, 18 months, you got to pivot fast. You got to shift fast. Because I was the oldie that like, hey, I wrote this is like Moses' tablet. He wrote it in stone, the Ten Commandments. That's what I'm talking about.
I know. Gotcha.
But it's not written in stone. Like I can get out an eraser and erase that business plan.
Yeah.
Change it.
I mean, I think it's just back to basics. I mean, there's, we've done several of these now, and we've interviewed a variety of producers from all across the country, and I think we're all doing the same. The majority are doing the same 3, 4, or 5, really 3 or 4 things in their business consistently, over and over and over. Boring, boring, boring. I look at it like any athlete or anybody that's great at what they do. You've got to do that 10,000 hours to be the expert.
Yes.
And in our business, that means phone work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a basic 101. Are you calling your agents every week? It's not sexy. It's not glamorous.
Yeah.
That's a must do. I mean, I think LOs, we've got to go back to basics if you've left them, and probably did because the market, like you said, shifted to the refis. We've got to go back to basics. It's got to stay in your plan and always be in your plan. One of the things that I get frustrated when I talk to different people is, they're afraid to call their agents to invite them to a webinar. I'm like, you're calling them every Tuesday anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to invite them to an upcoming webinar.
Yeah.
Clearly, it says you're not calling every Tuesday.
Yeah.
And you haven't probably talked to them in 6 or 8 weeks, and maybe you're feeling a little guilty reaching out of the blue because you've been pounding refis.
Yeah.
And you don't want your friend, the realtor, to say, hey, where have you been?
Yeah.
Nobody likes to hear that. But I mean, we want to make sure that we stay structured now more than ever, because as rates continue to maybe tick up a little bit throughout the rest of this spring and into the summer, guess who's coming out? Every single loan officer that's in your market are going to shift, some quicker than others. Some never left, by the way. The newer ones, they've been pounding your realtors, getting it after it. You've got to get back to it, or else you're going to be in a room full of a lot of LOs. Chasing the same realtor.
Chasing the same, yeah. You bring up that's a really good point. I think that you go back to the namesake of this podcast, the Contacts to Contracts podcast, is about how do I convert the contacts that I've made or the contacts that I have in my database into contracts. And I think that there was that period of time, this is what you're alluding to, where the refis were coming in so hot and heavy, we weren't necessarily staying in front of those referral partners. Listen, I would argue to you that right now they need us more than ever.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in the market that we're in right now, very, very low inventory. You and I were on a webinar this morning with a real estate office here in the Tampa Bay area. And one of the questions we pose is how many of you have made an offer on a property with a buyer that was at or under ask? Crickets.
No hands.
Crickets, right?
Yep.
So the flip side is every single offer we've made in the last 6 to 8 weeks has been an above ask offer. Okay?
Yep.
So I think that takes being aligned with a loan originator who understands that this is the market that we're in, is going to provide you some tools and resources to help you with, agents have those difficult conversations in this market. Right. But more importantly, I think we have to be creative to help people win deals, right? And so, in our industry, one of the fears that was building in like 2018 and 2019 was fintech. I don't want to be replaced by fintech, right? Which is, more of like the call center, consumer direct type loan originator. Loan officers, hear me say this: as long as you're providing value, you will never get replaced. Okay. And to me, that providing value is, I can't live in a market where I'm like, hey, Mr. Borrower, here's your 30-year fixed, right? You have got to take the time to uncover what is best for them and their family and present them solutions. And so, like an example in today's market, I think you're being short-sighted if you're saying, hey, Mr. Borrower, you're going to put 20% down on this property to do a conventional loan, when in reality, you might need $20,000 or $25,000 over ask to win the deal. I'd rather see a creative LO say, hey, we're going to put 5% down, and we're going to use the other cash that you were going to invest in this property to help you actually win an offer.
Right.
What are some of the other things you think LOs could be doing in this market to help their buyers and the buyer's agents that they're working with win some deals?
Oh, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, just about everybody I talk to, if you're not calling the listing agent when your buyer and selling agent are submitting an offer to really promote and the strength of that buyer as much as we're allowed legally to do. But we really want to be reaching out saying, hey, I'm John Jones with Van Dyke Mortgage. I'm doing the loan for Sally Smith, the Smiths, great family, whatever you can do to let that listing agent know that they can let their seller know, I feel pretty good about this offer. I feel like there's solid financing. We do have some cash deals, but I'd put this one on a list. If you're a lender and you're not at least doing that, you're missing out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is where it comes from, and we've talked about this before. Like in our business, everybody has great rates, everybody closes loans fast, everybody has great products, right? So if that makes us all even, you as an individual loan originator, what makes you different?
Yeah, I mean,
and that's one of the differentiating factors.
We go back now, and the stress you have right now, if you're a buyer, you're putting escrow money to close in 30 days. Every week I'm hearing stories where the sellers are getting, as rightfully so, it's their market, adamant about no extensions. I mean, you do have to partner with a lender and a local lender that work with and trust.
Yeah.
You go back to fintech or somebody at a bank. I mean, you hear these horror stories. We just won a deal yesterday because an online lender said, I don't think we can make that closing date. Well, locally we're able to do that and commit to that. But if you have a lender that without the relationship and that LO says, hey, we need a 2 or 3 week extension, your buyer is going to lose the deal. I mean, there's 4 or 5 ready to close, chomp at the bit, and it's probably not going to get extended.
Yeah.
So you really do have to have a strong partnership more now than ever.
Yeah. So John, I feel like we've kind of laid out what are some of the changes in the market today compared to what they were even 3 or 4 months ago. And I want to kind of bring it together a little bit because, you alluded to, we all had a great 2020 and, probably everybody's looking at their W-2. They're pretty happy with that. And nobody wants to go backwards, right? So I go back and I look at, like, there's 2 ways to grow your mortgage business, right? You can you can do more activities to build more relationships, right, that are going to help you pre-approve more borrowers, or you can grow through talent, right? So even if you're an individual LO, that growth through talent is leverage. All right, and it could be part-time leverage, it could be leveraged, meaning like a virtual assistant or something like that, or it could be hiring somebody full-time. But I think if you're the loan officer that's right now looking, like we've suggested, go back and look at my business, where it's been, where is it going based on the market that we're currently in and where we're heading. You've got to start to adjust, what do I need to do differently if I want to maintain the growth that I experienced in 2020. And I think, you just explained a whole bunch of stuff about what are some things that loan officers should be doing in this market to help their buyers win deals. It takes a lot of work.
You've got to have a plan, Brian.
But it is a lot more work, right? So, I mean, let's look about it. The work that I would have to put into closing 3 purchase transactions are closing 6 refis, they're probably about the same, give or take.
The refis may be easier.
That's what I'm saying. The refis would be, I could close 6 refis in the same amount of work it would take me to close 3
100%.
buyers transactions is the point that I'm making, right? So if it's taking more effort to close those purchase deals and I've got to close more deals to maintain the business that I had, it's going to take more work. So you're going to have to refine or tweak some of your systems and models to be able, let's go back to the podcast that we just did on what's my ceiling.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like we've talked about this past year is when is it the right time to hire on an assistant, to help you go from 4-6 units up to 8 to 10 units. Yep. Whatever that number is, you need bodies to help you get to that next level and build out your team.
Yep. Yeah. And this is where, as a loan officer, you've got to look into reinvesting in your business. Right. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, we just kind of laid out some things that as a loan officer, I would be taking a look at. It's not just about the behaviors and the activities. It's about measuring the return of investment on those activities, making sure that you have the right ones. Is your business plan, is your model currently set up for the market that we're in? And, and have you taken a look at the hard truths that I've got to change the way I'm doing business to be effective in the market that we're currently in?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, man, you think to add?
I mean, I think going forward, you're probably going to see rates maybe slightly increase through the summer, but I did hear some optimism that, in the next year or two, we may get another little bit of a low swing at some decent rates again.
So, well, I mean, so the lesson here is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. LO, like if you didn't do a really good job with your database in 2020, here's your do-over, right? And so what I am reading between the lines on what you're saying is, and by the way, we're talking about rates being like, they're not even 4, they're less than 4%. They're in the 3s. They're in the low 3s, matter of fact.
Right.
But if you're working with buyers today and they're working in that realm, and we get another bite at the apple in a year or two, those are going to be people who could probably refinance into lower rates and lower terms and have a similar payment, which we saw a lot of this year. We saw people go from a 30-year fix that they closed on 2 years ago to a 20-year fix today at a lower rate, and their payment is almost the same. They just chopped 8 or 10 years off of that mortgage term. So what I'm saying is set your database up now for that opportunity.
100%.
All right, cool.
Good job, man.
Anything else to add, my man?
No, I think that was it.
All right, cool deal. So, hey, listen, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Context to Contracts podcast. On behalf of John Jones, I am Bryan Lovell. We want you to know it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're in real estate, whether you're a loan originator, or you're in any kind of sales, we would love to help you grow your business and support your business in any way that we can. If you like what you see here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We out.
Thank you.